Welcome to the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson here with my friend, partner, and known to you all as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, co-host extraordinaire, Wes Brown.
I am quite possibly the most interesting man in the world. How you doing, Todd? Oh my God.
I'm doing good. I'm thinking today that I need to get you that t-shirt.
Oh, yes, let's do that.
Possibly.
Just quite possibly
on the front. And on the back, the most interesting man in the world.
Well, that should be interesting. That'll ask a lot. Quite possibly what? And I'll have to say, read the back, buddy.
They'll get it coming and going.
I haven't seen any requests for crazy things to do, so we'll see on our Instagram page or anything. But I'm sure that's coming.
You need to update your resume. Our guest this week is a creative force and an incredible artist. She currently has an exhibit at Alto Gallery entitled Exotic Sophisticated that runs through June 26th. Her website is marshamack.com. That's MARSHAMACK.com. And you can find her on Instagram at Marsha Mack. Welcome to the program, Marsha. How are you?
Thanks so much, guys. I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
We're happy that you were able to join us this evening.
Very much so. I'm excited.
Yeah. Before we get into this, I want you to take a moment and tell our listeners what they can expect to see when they go to your website, what kind of work you do and what mediums that you work with or work in.
Yes. I work in primarily ceramics. So my classic training is all in sculptural ceramics, and that's a bachelor's and a master's, but then also just hands in clay since the year 2004. And then additionally, on top of that, I'm working in a lot of other media, sometimes more ephemeral, impermanent materials like sugar or candies. I like to use a lot of scent and engage the senses. And often it's installed in a pretty immersive fashion. So with backdrops, other props, other unusual works that pop out of walls or sit on chairs. But I'm trying to create an experience. And this is going to be a big visual impact. So I'm attracted to glittery things, mirrors sometimes, a lot of living items, just as many kind of visual markers as I can tick. I want to do that to kind of create an explosion of the senses.
Why the whole thing with scent? What draws you to that?
Yes. So I've been working with scent since 2015, and I like it because it is insidious. It's something that you cannot choose to engage with if you have, your olfactory system intact. So you can choose not to look at a painting, for example, but when you step into a room, if you have sensory capabilities, you're going to know it's happening. So I think it's interesting to take that choice away, to implant my intention in people's heads. And then there's also these added elements of scent and the olfactory system being the most effective way to recollect emotion and imagery and memory, really. So oftentimes, if you have a really distinctive experience and it's paired with a strong scent, when you smell that again, you'll recall it pretty quickly. And so with my work, with the visual elements being pretty upfront and loud sometimes, paired with a scented element, perhaps the next time you smell, like an Exotic Sophisticated, a plug-in Paradise brand, Febreze brand air freshener, you might remember this show. And so that's the intention, is to put these little calling cards, little tabs in people's minds so that they can be recalled involuntarily in the future.
How do people react to that? Is it pretty positive? Do you have some people that are like, oh my God, that's too intense for me?
That has happened. So I've gone a little overboard on a few occasions, just using really powerful scent and really flooding areas. There was a show a couple years ago in Denver at a project space called Yes Ma'am Projects. And I was using Tiger Balm, which is a sort of a mentholated herbal balm. Like it was always used on me from my mom when I was sick. You put it on your back to kind of clear your chest, like Vicks, but it's Asian Vicks. And I had that burning in these incense burners that I'd made in ceramic, with like a little flame underneath. And it was, I mean, people's eyes were watering, people's noses were being completely blown out. I had one person that had the flu or they were sick at the time and they were loving it. Like they were finally being able to breathe after a week of, respiratory issues. So I've had different reactions. And then, of course, if there is the occasional person with an allergy to synthetic scent, I haven't had anyone come forward and have a big issue with that, but that could potentially be.
I was curious about that because I can be ultra sensitive to smell. And I saw that you had done these different projects where you were incorporating that. And so I was just curious. That's why I had to ask that question. Is the people that get like overwhelmed by it, is it usually male or female? Does it affect gender more, one gender more so than the other?
It's interesting that you ask that. And I'm fascinated by that as well. And I think it has a little bit more to do with what the scent is. So in a previous work called Happy Ending I'd done several years ago, I was using Clinique Happy, the perfume. And after several hours performing with it, I was kind of spritzing it on people and myself in the installation backdrop. It was, you could cut the room with a knife, like just through the perfume particles. And I think people less familiar might, with, different perfumed scents and things, might have more of a reaction to it. And I think, it's not necessarily bad, but it can be overwhelming. And so I think that perhaps men were a little bit more taken aback by that, not having been exposed to this quite as much or in such concentration. But really, it was overwhelming for everyone, including myself. I burned out my nose for 2 days.
Wow. So how do you pair a scent with whatever medium you're working in?
It has everything to do with the content of the work. So I'm not picking anything arbitrarily. I work in a project-based fashion. So I'm working with a set of problems or rules that I'm problem solving with the projects that I create. So that means I'm not going to always pick a fruit scent or something. Like, it doesn't work that way. It's what am I doing? What makes sense? What is available? And what feels right? So merging these elements, something often comes to the forefront. And I don't have to scent it. It's something that I do when it works, when it makes sense. That's how all of the elements in my work are coming together. For Happy Ending, I was really curious in this kind of idea of happiness as a commodity that is often marketed to us in an insidious way, where we don't notice that we are being sold an idea rather than a product. So we want to be happy. And I think that by purchasing things to kind of construct our own identity and get closer to that market-driven urge, that we are, being controlled in a way by marketing and commercial forces. And so that they had a perfume called Happy, and it was Clinique's #1 Grand Slam best-selling ever perfume, just was gloriously perfect. They have amazing catchphrases that I was reciting during this performance. I was inviting people to come into this little corner with me and, get perfume if they want, take pictures, but really having it be this kind of really unusual bonanza of performance. There was a sexual element here. I think the female as spectacle, this idea of commercializing and selling emotion, all came together with this work.
What was the driving force behind this one on Happy Endings? And if you could explain a little bit, you talked about the scent, but if you could explain a little bit for our listeners who cannot see it, hopefully they'll go check out your website because I love some of the imagery from this piece.
So this work started with a lot of my research and interest into the formation of identity as we experience it on a day-to-day basis. And so trying to bring a little bit more awareness, self-awareness, to fully understand the factors affecting that experience. And really to then analyze underlying power structures for how society, how personhood, how gender, how the free market, capitalism, sexuality, how these things coalesce and break back apart on an individual level. So I'm looking at my own lived experience, but hoping to find something more universal in that.
So it's actually an experience with the scent, Happy, but it's also a performance piece as well, right? Because you take on this like other identity in some ways.
Yes, definitely. So it is a performance work that, I mean, it can be displayed without the performer in it, but this piece comes to life with the performer. And so it is a plush pink backdrop that I'd hand sewn using some discarded yarn fiber in this like soft pink, vaguely vaginal form. And then I'd painted my whole body gold bikini, blonde wig, and went in it and was kind of dispensing this product to people, interacting with them, inviting them to come into this little corner to take pictures. I'd intended for there to be a social media element. This was in 2015. Okay. So it was a little bit of, I might not have gone that route this time, but yeah.
I wish I would have been able to see this in person. This whole yarn structure that you sewed, it's pretty phenomenal. Like, do you still have that? I want that.
Yes, I do still have it. I still have some of this material too. I just love it so much, in a few different colors. And it was from a yarn factory, an industrial yarn factory. And there were problems with the fiber. So they were discarding these giant industrial like bags of it. And I was able to buy it from a materials salvage place. And I've been carrying it around with me just in vacuum sealed bags from place to place, city to city for what would that be, 6 years now? And I just can never see myself ever parting with it because I do have a real material fascination. And with my process, these items can kind of interplay off each other. So working with my ideas, but also informed very much by what's available, which entirely depends on the commercial market. So shopping.
I really love the fact that this is performance art, it's installation, and then it attacks the vision and the whole sensory piece. I think that's brilliant because I've never heard anybody using scents in their installation work. And I think it's right to the T of what you were talking about with consumerism and the interplay of the woman form or sexuality or whatever. I think that's brilliant.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I'm often, and by often I mean always, trying to push myself to make something that I haven't seen before. So I'm less interested in rendering a sunset on a landscape, though no shade, like that's great. When done well, these things can be transcendent. But for me, my interests lie in really pushing material, pushing ideas, pushing the format for experience. So glad to hear you say that.
Yeah.
I read where you described yourself as being very tactile. Are you a person that has all your senses, do you feel, are ultra heightened?
Not necessarily. So I am a very tactile person. I'm fidgeting with a rubber band right now and other little items. I've been told that I make people nervous. Like, 'cause I'm always touching, and a tinkerer is what I call myself. I'm always tinkering with something. And I love eating, which has a lot to do with scent, and I like looking. So I don't know that I have a particularly overdeveloped palate, not overdeveloped, but like a very sensitive palate, but I do enjoy my senses quite a bit.
Yeah.
Have you always been that, even as a child? Were you that kind of a child where you're always tinkering with stuff and, touching things and?
Oh, yes. It's been, it's been a lifestyle. Always running around, touching things. I mean, sometimes breaking things by accident, make a lot of mistakes, but I always keep going, and always adventurous eater. I've always just been hungry, period.
I can relate to that. I can always eat, and I love eating. That's like one of my favorite pastimes. I love to eat, and unfortunately my body shows it now. But the other thing that I do, speaking of tactile, is I love the feel of fabric, so like walking through a clothing store and just feeling the different types of fabric. And it's really kind of interesting. I just love that tactile, I guess, element of touch on certain things,
Absolutely. And I think I use a lot of found materials that I often source in retail spaces, or more and more I'm using the internet as a digital marketplace that I'm thinking about more and more as its own kind of ecosystem. But I think the more you use familiar objects and materials, the more chance that people already have associations with it. They already have experiences with it. And so you're able to use pre-existing archetypes and ideas that exist in people's minds. They're bringing their own associations forward, which then I can work to subvert, play off, add nuance to, what have you.
So you grew up in California, is that correct?
I did, yeah, in the Bay Area, just north of San Francisco.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up in a creative family? Were your parents creative? Did you have other siblings?
Yes, I have one older brother. He is a computer programmer. Couldn't be more different. But my dad does and has always owned a picture framing shop. So I've been around art my whole life. I was running around art openings as a child, always hanging around that snack table, And my mom is very creative as well, an artist, not professional, but always making things around the house, drawings, paintings, beautiful felt works. And she is a force of nature in the kitchen as well.
So you got a lot of that from your parents then. That's pretty cool.
So, yeah.
So what made you decide to explore ceramics?
Well, I found ceramics in the year 2004 in high school, in my junior year. And I just had an open elective and I didn't care about anything but hanging out with my friends. And then I'd taken the only class available for my schedule. As you'll find, many people who work in the medium, sometimes it finds you. Sometimes you get the bug and that's it. And that was very much the case for me. I didn't go in with any ideas of what, the history of clay could be, how I wanted to push the medium, the nature of tactility, the forces of science occurring in the kilns, it's amazing, but I didn't know any of that. It was just going in, touching this strange material, building in a void of three-dimensional space. And then on top of that, designing surface is, and always will be very alluring to me.
What typically is your process as far as, I know that once you delve into a subject, like you're off to the races, is it just like you run across something or you're researching something and all of a sudden that thing just strikes you and you're like, okay, I'm going to explore this thing.
The lightning strike.
The lightning strike. There you go. That's a much better description.
Well, I believe that to be largely non-existent, but it does happen to a degree, and that I always have lines of inquiry open. I'm always working. I do believe that progress comes from hard work. So I don't sit around and wait for a lightning strike of an idea, but I think in the studio, keeping your hands in clay, keeping looking, always thinking, always, I'm an artist, so I don't do this only on the weekends or when I have free time. I'm doing it all the time. And so if you're thinking that way, I believe that these ideas, these things that you're thinking about in the moment, things that you've been thinking about for years, things that reach back into conversations you've had with people and other bodies of work, they all come together. They're constantly, floating around. And so it's really a matter of identifying it and harnessing it. But if all of these elements are active, then it's not so much pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It's more looking at the tools that you have, looking at the ideas that you have, having the intuition, I think, to sense when there's something there, and then moving forward. And once you've identified it, then you just crush it until you've got it.
Once you have that idea, you're just working it until you see it till what you feel is its natural evolution, its natural end.
Very much so, yes. And I think that more and more with my practice, it's not about what I can get away with or what is sufficient or what will someone else like, or perhaps be impressed by. It's a sense of internal satisfaction. I'm very motivated by my own set of standards and aesthetics. And so I think that I don't know. I want to go to the studio right now. It's making me excited.
All right. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys.
So creativity just continues to create more creativity, right? Our ideas, develop more ideas.
Mm-hmm. And it takes work though. Like if you're thinking about a topic, I think that it is your job to research it. I think it's your job to pursue it relentlessly, because what else are you doing? If you're not going to do it, who is? And if you're not going to do it right, then why should I give you my time? So that's always something in my mind. That's what keeps me pushing forward. And I do expect that of everyone else as well.
I like that.
Why not? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. You always got to push yourself, right? I mean, that's what separates the greats from just the average people, is they're willing to push themselves beyond the next level, you know? And then is there,
and I think,
no, go ahead, please finish that thought.
I think that having passion at the forefront of your practice as a motivating factor will always show through. And if you don't have that, which who knows why, it's okay. If you don't have it in, I don't want to say it so aggressively, but if it's not something you need to do, it's okay. But go ahead and do what it is that you want to do. But really, I'm hoping to make, I'm always trying to be in circles and in the orbit of people who are compelled and possessed.
So that's very much a part of your practice as well, as surrounding yourself with other people that are pushing themselves. That helps you also stay in that mindset of following your muse and pushing yourself.
Absolutely. Without community, an artist is really at a disadvantage. It's really tough. I think this idea of the monolithic genius that sits alone, tortured, and then produces these magical gems of works, that is nonsense. That is an old idea from the 1900s and earlier. It is an idea that has privileged white men. You know, I think of these tortured artists alone, isolated, producing brilliant works of art. They're all white guys. And it's part of a narrative that is fueled by a commercial economy, you know, telling us which artists are worth investment, what kind of work is going to succeed because we have this lineage going back, whatever. That is real. But I think that by working, that has been real, but that we can now, knowing what we know, take these things apart and recognize that artists and art, and nobody exists in a vacuum. Art is inextricably tied to the time and place and culture in which it is produced. That is highly influenced by your community and who you surround yourself with. Who you are matters. And I think that all comes through with the work. So for me, I'm not going around necessarily seeking out like who's going to be helpful for my practice. Oh, that's going to be my friend. It's not like that. But it's more recognizing that there might be something about my experience that shapes my work and that is giving me a reason to continue to make. And that's been my experience.
I know that you've bounced around a lot since you got your degree, your master's, and you've lived in LA. You grew up in this Northern California area. And then you did your master's in New York, right? Syracuse?
Yes. So from the Bay Area, went to SF State. So just a little bit across the Golden Gate Bridge, did my undergrad, master's in Syracuse. Then I did a postgrad fellowship down in Los Angeles. And then after that, wound up in Denver kind of by accident, but very happy to have landed here. And so in each place, over time, I've learned how important this building of community is. And each time I move, it gets a little bit quicker. It gets a little bit more streamlined because I've had to do it several times. And I always have my national network and people that I'm talking to constantly, people that I love. They're all over the place, and that's great. But I think you also need a home base just to make things, pleasant, just to make... So that's something that I'm thinking about a lot now also as I approach my move date at the end of the month. So, yeah.
And you're headed from Denver to Columbus, Ohio. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes. I'll be moving shortly in just a few weeks. It's come so fast. I can barely believe it. But my partner, Matthew Pavir, will be getting his Master of Fine Art from The Ohio State University. So we're heading out there. And I'm excited to see the Midwest, but excited to take these tools and these ideas to a new place too, because I've done it before. I will do it again.
It sounds exciting.
I am excited. It's totally exciting. And I think after a year of being cloistered away, I'm now excited to be just going out and making new friends, experiencing life again in Denver, but also more receptive perhaps than I would have been otherwise to just pick up and go. I'm thinking of it as a sort of 3-year vacation in a way.
Yeah.
Yes. Though I'll be working, but
So how was Denver kind of what was the word you used? Kind of a happy accident?
My partner and I had moved from Syracuse. He'd met me down in LA, and we had nowhere to go. We didn't have anything on the horizon. So we just drove up to Denver to visit his brother quickly before we were planning to just drive on to Philly and just make it happen. But 2 weeks later, we signed a lease. And that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
So it was very much an accident.
What struck you about Denver that you thought, okay, we should stay here and check it out for a while?
Yeah, well, it's the smallest city that either of us had lived in. And I'm not sure what it is, something in the air, perhaps. It was summertime. So it's been almost 6 years to the month. We'd moved out in July, or I'd moved out in July. We're leaving end of June now. So it's hard to say, just a feeling, intuition.
And so when you moved here, did you feel pretty welcomed by the arts community? Do you feel like the art community here is pretty engaging and friendly and supportive?
Absolutely. Denver is so unique in this way. Having just come from Los Angeles, it couldn't be more different. There's all kinds of opportunities here that public art funded opportunities that don't necessarily exist in that capacity with such accessibility in a lot of other places. So there's a population boom occurring in Denver, and that does transfer to the arts as well, I believe, plus a general inclination to help each other, to come out and support each other, to just come out and be friendly. And why not? There's an interest in new artists and new people. What are they making? Let's get to know them. Where that mentality is quite different than a lot of places, which focuses more on an exclusionary mindset. That's
interesting to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could see that, but you just never know when you're in the situation, or you're in when you live in a place, you kind of just takes things for granted. So it's interesting to hear from someone who has moved around and experienced different cities that you feel that here in Denver.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. It's a great place. I could be back 3 years. For me, Denver is home now. So that when I say that Columbus, Ohio will be a 3-year vacation, it's because I really am seeing and thinking of Denver as home base, where the anchor is set, the tether to then be pulled back into a few years away.
Having experienced someplace like LA, or being from the Northern California area, do you see Denver on this upward trajectory as far as the arts community and what's going on here?
I do see Denver as being on an upward trajectory because of the level of support. And as the city continues to grow, that would hopefully translate to new collectors and increased support in the arts, which seems to be the trend. Additionally, our arts landscape, commercial landscapes are so affected by social media. And so you can often, have a national, global, whatever reach from any location. And I think that visibility, that kind of ability to make good work and then catch the attention of people elsewhere, I see a lot of that kind of coming back to Denver in different ways. So a lot of friends who are artists in town are, doing shows in different places and kind of bringing that attention. It's all kind of coming back to this place. And so I think Denver's becoming more and more on the map, on the national map in that way.
That's great to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, social media has definitely impacted how people buy and sell art, and the way that you're able to promote yourself and live someplace that you want to live, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a double-edged sword, but I think that we cannot ignore it. So it opens a lot of doors, but then it also controls your mode of communication and the content a lot of the time as well. So it's a big problem that a lot of artists are making work just for Instagram or just for social media. So not made to be experienced, but made to have this visual pop, made to look good in the square format, made to be colorful, have enough texture and something soft. You're going to want to see some clouds in there. And then, okay, that's it. That's the clickbait. And so that is a big part of things. But I think with a lot of my work, like I'm hoping that the pictures, I hope they come out, I want to have it documented. But for a show like Exotic Sophisticated, that experiential quality is, I think, even more important.
I agree. And I love the fact that you seem pretty savvy with, what you do, and you got a lot of different irons in the art world besides just being an artist, right? So you're an associate gallery director. Is that correct? That
Yes.
title?
Yes, it's been David, the owner, and myself there for nearly 5 years. It's been great. So I've worked there where I've really learned just so much about the commercial art world and how these circles overlap and what it means to be a commercial success, how that plays out in careers in museums and et cetera, et cetera. So I've been fascinated, sometimes appalled, but it is a business. So that's actually perhaps one of the most important things I've learned. And the sooner everybody learns that and figures out where you stand on that map, what your goals are, you're going to have you sleep better at night, In addition, I've also been an educator. So I've taught ceramics consistently for many, many years. And that's been at art centers, which I tend to prefer because there's no grades. It's just people are there because they want to be self-motivated folks. And then also recently I taught at UNC up in Greeley, and that was a thing. So yes.
That was a thing.
A good thing?
Higher ed is a whole other beast. Yes, it was a big thing.
It's political, right?
It's very political. The students are so stressed. I mean, there were many reasons why this last stint in higher education adjuncting was a big ordeal. But I think a lot of it is just the stress of pandemic, and the attendance was completely out the window, and people were exposed, and so they couldn't come in and put the work into the studio. And this isn't a reading assignment. Like, you need to put the hours into the work. And I can tell if you haven't put the hours in. You cannot lie to me. Like, I can tell this hasn't been worked on. And if the work isn't there, then the grade isn't there. And then, of course, that is a big issue with undergraduates. So I was just reminded. Oh my gosh. So.
Because you have all these very unique experiences, obviously that plays into your own practice and, the takeaway, right? Mm. But at the core of it, you're hoping that the work resonates with somebody when they come and see like this show, Exotic Sophisticated. But the main thing is that you're creating this work because that is who you are, and you create it first and foremost for yourself. Is that correct?
I do. Yes. I just feel compelled. It is something that I must do. It's really, there's a switch in my brain that can only get switched on if I see the image in my mind laid out in front of me. I don't know why that is, but that just is.
It's just the way you're wired, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Going back to the whole seeing the commercial world of fine art, what's the most appalling thing that you've ever experienced or seen? And not necessarily here in Denver, but
Sure.
You've traveled a lot and have had some interesting experiences, I'm sure.
Yes. I think it's more just a fact of the commercial arts, which is that the market prefers stable product. So they want to know that when they're going to this particular artist, that it's going to be oil on canvas and about this scale and about these colors. There's going to generally be figures interacting in this way. And so that kind of stability, that predictability, lets people know that this is a better piece than actually this piece 2 years ago, and that this one is actually more valuable. And so that continuing in those steps, which I see as being pigeonholed essentially, that is good for the market. That is good for your market. That will help collectors understand what they're looking at and what they're buying, what they're investing in for some of them, which sometimes has nothing to do with the content or the look of the work, but for its value and its viability on the market, the resale market. So knowing that, I in some ways have actively pushed back against that, and that I don't create one stable product, that it is project-based. So we're going to have different imagery. We're going to bring in different ideas. I'm making ceramic elements installed in polysensorial presentations, but not all of that can be purchased necessarily. So there's a little bit of that question mark as well. So in my own way, I am challenging the negative things that I've seen, and in trying to find my own way of really getting at the reason to make art in the first place. And so that is something personal that has less to do with other people. And it's just really come into focus over the years, seeing that business aspect, seeing how the displeasure that a lot of artists can have, knowing that they're going to have to get back in the studio and grind down on these next 5 pieces that are already sold. There, there's not that spark and that innovation there. And I really need to have that innovation, that problem solving. Otherwise, it's not a passion project. It's a job.
Right. And that's why, when you think about having an art life,
Mm-hmm.
you're choosing not to have like a regular 9-to-5 job per se, not fitting into this idea of what society thinks you should be. You're making your own thing and being your own person. You're very much independent, right?
Definitely. Yes. So I think for many of us, you have to acknowledge that that you're not going to have some of the same stability as other fields. But I mean, only a crazy person would do this. And I think so. That's why would you do this if you didn't have to do it? And so when I see uninspired work, it's always in my head. Why are you doing this if you don't have to do this? Like, save yourself.
I love that. So you've been on my radar for a while, and I'm like, I think she's really interesting. She does some really compelling work. What I liked about what I saw on your website and your social media is that I wasn't seeing the same stuff over and over again. Like, you're really experimenting and pushing yourself without, I'm sure you always care to a certain extent, right? But you just really care about what the work is, the quality of the work, and what you're trying to do with it, and not being led down that path of like, I should be doing this. And like you said, you can tell when work is inspired and when it's not.
I think so. Yes. It's really something that just keeps me coming back. Like I am very interested in skill building and mastering material and seeing things come to fruition, and putting in the hours really is what that is to me. I'm interested in that, but that can change over time. These things, I bring things into my web. I want to collect more skills. I want to understand more materials. So when things become available, I try to, and if I'm interested in it, I try to let it just happen and to trust myself that I'm going to get it to a place where it's working.
So what skills currently are you working on, or do you wish that you could incorporate into your practice?
Yeah, well, the first thing that popped into my head is stonemasonry, but that's not really something that I'm actively pursuing. Right now, I'm thinking more and more, a little bit hyperbolically, but also very seriously about shopping as being an artistic practice, or at least an important factor in a mixed media practice that is talking so much about the commercial market and capitalistic forces and these abilities to alter experience. And so I'm being funny, but also I am being serious. So finding these kinds of being able to source charged material, being able to find it, being able to kind of navigate and understand this network and these kinds of offerings, and then the psychology of the commercial market. So perhaps that's more of a research-based interest, but I think you got to be researching and thinking. Otherwise, what have you got? So that's what I'm working on. In addition to ceramics.
So in addition to the making,
mm-hmm.
you love the hunt of figuring out how you can get unique things, source unique materials to incorporate into your art.
Definitely. And I love that term that you just used. I just wrote it down, the hunt. I do quite enjoy the hunt. And I think you can have that sense of discovery. And I think that a lot of what I talk about and think about is how we can be persuaded and manipulated into investing our energy in dead ends, which would be into trying to buy happiness with a product, trying to be somebody based on something that you can buy and show others. But I'm very interested in that, in the very real experience of that sometimes working. So there's a bit of a dragon eating its tail in this situation, and that it comes back around, it builds itself up and breaks itself down. So I love the hunt. I genuinely enjoy it. I like clicking around and comparing prices and seeing what insane presentation is this? Like, what were they thinking? I enjoy all of that. And I think that just by virtue of being on this commercial market space, that there are problems embedded in it. But I think that by really leaning into it, that I'm getting to a place that is paradoxical and interesting.
New Magazine is our media sponsor for the Tenet podcast. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. Look to New for compelling stories from the world of art and fashion. Thanks for listening. Let's talk about this current show that you have at Alto.
Mm-hmm.
What are people going to see when they go and check this out?
Oh my gosh. Well, what they're going to see when they walk in is a waterfall paradise. It is tropical paradise. And that's starting from the front door when you get in, which is covered in a sticker vinyl of a waterfall sourced on the internet. And then on the interior, the first thing you'll see is the whole room is covered in this repeating pattern of this scene of a waterfall, multiple waterfalls, with then some beautiful egrets and some pink lotus flowers in the foreground, which are all clearly photoshopped in a very funny way to me. I just love them. And so I have that as the backdrop. There's going to be a light scent that smells just sort of perfumey, a little bit fresh, a little bit like vanilla, but that is a Febreze branded plug-in called Paradise. So for me, that is the scent of paradise. In the space itself, you'll see 6 pink mirrored pedestals, on top of which are these ceramic items. So they are hand-built vase forms. So they're sculptural vase forms that have 2 sides. They will be filled with blooms of artificially dyed blue orchids and behind each one, there are additional waterfall backdrops printed on textile that are then pinned on top of the other larger waterfall backdrop. So it's almost like having multiple windows open on a screen. It's waterfalls over waterfalls, many of which are edited and blown out color-wise to be very much enhanced aesthetic. And then there's these kind of sparkling, glittering pedestals that have these really, the vessels themselves are quite elaborate. They have a lot of colorful glazing on them. They also feature a lot of different elements glued on. So I have a lot of faux rhinestones, faux pearl cabochons. I have a lot of real freshwater pearls on them. I have some cubic zirconia in some areas, cherry quartz, all kinds of different things. So there is this interplay of high and low of these commercially produced and purchased items that I've collected and brought together to build this paradise, to find this happy place. But it's also relying on these very trained skills that I have, that some would say that I have perverted with these cheap items that I'm attaching to them and bringing into the mix.
I was completely enthralled with it when I was there yesterday, and this is one of the pieces that I really loved. It's called "Moths to the Flame," I think.
Moths to a Flame.
Moths to a Flame. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talk about this piece just a little bit, if you would.
Of course. So this is a very fun wall piece, and it features 2 Io moths. They're from the Automeris family. Male is on top and then the female underneath. I've built these different ceramic hooks into them and a shelf, planning to add these embellishments after it's been fired and finished. And so this one has, how many is that? 9 hand-blown faceted purple glass beads, wire wrapped by hand, and then this little platform of faux green gemstones in their own little prong settings. And this piece is, I really like it a lot. I think it's just fun. I think the elements are really working. It features these glazes. These are commercially produced glazes that are often considered in the ceramic world, which is its own sort of organism, but they're a little bit cheap, like they are not a classy item to be using. So I wanted to challenge some of these ideas in this piece and with many of these pieces by essentially breaking many of the rules that I'd been trained in and which still control the conventional kind of landscape of the ceramic world and then fine art spheres. So mixing these skills with these commercially produced products.
I love it. And you described it to a T as far as when you come in, it exudes happiness. Like when I went in there and I walked around the gallery, I was happy. This work makes me happy.
Woo. That's good. Yes. So I want that to be a part of it. So as we've been talking, I think some of my larger ideas about cultural critique and about these kind of societal problems and conversations come up. But I think the way to get there and the way for me to be my most honest self is to tap into some of that joy and some of that playfulness, because I don't think that it is effective and I don't think it's honest really to kind of go around waving a stick at everybody or shaking your finger at everybody, trying to teach somebody something, quote unquote. I'm here trying to understand this experience, trying to understand what's around me, and having fun is part of that. And I think that's part of that joy and that passion that I'm so glad is coming through, but that I do consciously want to bring into the fold.
I can tell that you have a serious side to you, but you also have a very whimsical side as well. Do you consider yourself a pretty happy person?
I think so. I mean, we are all so complex, of course, but I do think that for the most part, I'm pretty upbeat. And so perhaps these reflect myself in that way, and that I do like to go out. I like to have a good time. I like to travel if I can. I like to play. I like to do things for no reason other than pleasure. But I also want to make sure that I am being responsible and that I'm being true to myself in my own responsibility of what my capabilities are and what my interests are, and not being complacent. And so part of that involves this kind of ongoing research. It means prodding into areas that are going to be unpleasant for some people and that aren't always so fun. But I think maybe the best way to do that, for me to get some of these ideas into circulation, it can be to disguise them under a fun facade. But like I'm saying, like kind of with that shopping as artistic practice, there's a playfulness to it, but there's also something serious right underneath the crust there, which is that I think that it is fertile for investigation and for better understanding of ourselves and, the factors that shape our world.
It's much more complex, right?
Yes. So I'm hoping that there's a complexity there, that you can see the works and engage in the pieces, perhaps visually first, because there is a flash there. There's a sparkle to it. There's a lure that's going to draw you in, that can come in the aesthetic form. But that, should you care to, there is a little bit more to chew on there. They're not just flash. Like, these come about through, years of investigation, through months of work, through close consideration, through scrutiny, through editing. And so when these things are working, it should be a synthesis of those factors. And the entry point is going to be sometimes that colorfulness, sometimes that sparkling factor.
There's a piece I'd like to talk about, Todd. It's called Behind Her Eyes. And I don't know.
Perfect. That's one of the ones that I photographed, and it resonated with me as well.
Yeah. Can you just talk about that piece? I really like that. That's really interesting.
Thank you. Yeah. So this piece is a sort of bean shape on its side, and it stands on these two kind of rock-like forms, and it has an offset spout. It is a vessel form. And then on the face of it are all of these sculpted eyes. And, for me, I'm thinking a lot about, visibility. I'm thinking about analysis. I'm thinking about looking about what's in front of us, what's behind us, what we know, what we know, what we don't know, we don't know, these kinds of things. And so for me, I do rely on symbols sometimes. And one that I've used for many years is kind of these eyes and figurative elements, which I've brought into several of these works. And so I think on the one hand, just touching back to that technique of using something that's going to immediately attract somebody, I think that the way that these eyes are inset and sculpted and glazed, I think that they're immediately interesting. I think I was trained as a figurative sculptor, and there's an immediate connection when people see a human form. You can't help it. You're going to try and figure out, does it look realistic? How is it distorted? Who is it? What is it? But, we're instinctively trying to read on human elements something. And so I liked using that in this way at a piece that looks back at you and also asks the same questions.
I think the interesting thing about eyes too is also a lot of times you can't, you might be able to tell a lie or tell it, when you're telling something, but the eyes will always give you away, it seems like. When I was looking at this, I was just like, that's what drew me in, is like the eyes. And so I was just trying to kind of wrap my head around it. So like I said, I'm really intrigued by this piece. I think it's really well done.
It's a lot of people's favorite, and thank you. And I think eyes have a lot of symbolic value in our culture as well. So, things like the evil eye as being a repellent for, bad vibes and bad energy and psychological attack, essentially, witchcraft, things like this. The all-seeing eye. We have an eye on our money, So there are just so many associations with it. So I think that's part of that, using people's preloaded ideas, essentially, their associations, and then you call upon that when you reference it. So symbol, essentially. So I'm glad that these are working.
Yeah.
This piece here, I think it's called Luna, right?
Yes.
This was another one of my favorite pieces that I really enjoyed. And Talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Definitely. Yeah. So this is a porcelain piece. It's a wall hanging piece. I was working on, trying to, with a few of these, with these different holes and hooks and shelves, creating areas to knowing that I wanted to further embellish them later on. And so this moth imagery, this is a Luna moth. I have been using these for a few years now. I actually have 7 moths tattooed on my back. One of them is the Luna, one is the Death's Head, which appears on a different piece, and one of them is the Automeris Io moth. And I'm interested in them as a symbol for a few reasons. They're kind of speak to historically to degradation and a lack of control. They're also the Luna moth, for example, as an adult, a mature adult, does not eat. Once it reaches maturity, it lives just for a few days to reproduce and then it dies. And so I think there's something interesting about that level of instinct and maybe it's not planned obsolescence, it's just its life cycle. And for many years, I've been using moths as symbols in ceramic work and in other references because I think on that one hand, I quite enjoy them visually. I think they're beautiful. But also, I think it's interesting that when it comes to humans, we think they're beautiful, so we collect them. We pluck them from nature and stick a pin through them and display them. And so in essence, their beauty and their individuality is also their death sentence. So I'm always thinking of that a little bit when I'm using this type of imagery.
I love that. And then this piece, another moth piece. Talk about that piece.
Yes. So this piece, Split Lime, so this is a double-sided work. Well, they're all double-sided, but so this one has a split lime imagery right on the front, a death's head moth on it, a hawk moth, and then it has those 2 fasteners where I have these Aurora Borealis heart-shaped crystal pendant charms hanging from a chain. And so it is a bit of a twisted smiley face in a way, but it also uses some personal imagery here. So back to those moths that I'm fascinated by for multiple reasons. I do have one of these on my back in my own moth collection. And I also have a split lime tattoo as well. And so I'm, in more recent years, investigating this level of, so where does my subjectivity lie? How much as author do I want to infuse myself in the work? And then as I build this vocabulary of imagery and symbols, they begin to take on their own meaning as they replicate throughout bodies of work over the years. And so this one features all of those elements.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And then I want to ask you about your infatuation with Pocky. Because this plays out in your work, and this is very different than the other pieces that we were talking about as far as when you go in the gallery. I'm just curious. In strawberry, you obviously like strawberry.
Yes. So this work does use a lot of Pocky imagery and strawberry. So strawberry Pocky is my favorite. So this dialogue with these imported candies began recently in the past, 4 or 5 years, as I've been more curious about investigating my own cultural heritage. So I'm half Vietnamese and half white, like German and Scandinavian. And so I was raised in very, just Caucasian spaces. And over time, it's funny, I forget that I don't appear this way, that I wear this ethnic marker and identity that I sometimes forget about, and it can separate me from people. It changes my experience. And so in order to better understand that, I started to think about how and when these differences manifested consciously for me. And that amounted to visits to the Asian grocery store as a child with my mom, who's a Vietnamese refugee during the Vietnam War. And in these spaces, in these Asian grocery stores, which I am now starting to consider cultural sites, their own non-registered cultural sites, I would go and pick my favorite candies with my mom, which happened to be strawberry Pocky, Bataan rice candy, and white rabbit creamy candies. So these imageries come through works a lot. as these kind of personal symbol, but also speaking to building of identity through that commercial space. So none of these candies are made or produced or imported from Vietnam. They're all, they're like Japanese, Chinese, just they come from different places. And yet in the Asian grocery store for Asian immigrants, it often becomes this, it's a wash, it's a pan-Asian place. And so I think that speaks a lot to cultural identity in the United States. And then I'm in there feeling comfortable, but also feeling even alienated from that experience as well. I have no language, not raised culturally Vietnamese at all. So I, in many ways, am kind of a tourist in this space as well. I'm tied by my interest in food, by my history eating these candies. And so the imagery from some of these boxes, like the Pocky box, the strawberries from the box, the color pink, the white rabbits are coming through in different forms. Sometimes the imagery from the packages, but in several works in this show, I have porcelain figurines that I've embedded into works. So that being a reference back to that. The Bataan rice candy has different peonies and other flowers on it. So kind of using these elements, using those as my a reference and a touch point visually and conceptually to kind of bring in playfully. It's not the sole focus. That personal vocabulary, that visual vocabulary does exist in this way. And I plan to keep using it because it just feels very, feels important.
I love that, seeing this thread that runs through all the work. And I'm glad you spoke to it because I think it's really, I think it's very interesting. So even though your mom is Vietnamese and you're part Vietnamese, you don't really relate to the culture. You didn't really grow up with that much in your house.
No, not much at all. I mean, my connection is through food. I'll eat, whatever at a Vietnamese restaurant, or I've been to Vietnam a couple of times, but I don't have that cultural experience. I really know almost nothing about Vietnamese culture or language, religion, not really even about history. So I'm kind of coming at it knowing that it's my responsibility and this is something I should probably know because everybody reads it on my body, but that I'm trying to get there as well.
So your trips to Vietnam, was that to see family?
No. So there must still be family there, but I don't know any of them. And my mom will never go back. She'll hardly talk about her experiences. They were, horrible, war-torn, traumatizing. And so when I've gone, it's been completely as a tourist, just traveling with my good friend. We're there eating, we're there, looking at our travel books. I'm there as a tourist. And so I think there's something interesting in that as well. So while abroad in Vietnam on 2 occasions, I've gone around and been very conscious of, purchasing different tchotchkes and seeing the kind of imagery, how this nation kind of proliferates this idea of itself. And so the pink lotus or the lotus flower is, I believe, the national flower of Vietnam, and it's everywhere. And so the more I saw that, the more I wanted to then bring these kind of lotuses in. So when I found these big backdrops that featured these lotus flowers on them, I was just like feeling very good. Like, this is perfect. This is the one. I think I'll buy 8 of these at 7 by 10 feet. Perfect. Like, it felt right. So like, that's how that market availability, how that kind of internet shopping, how that, trawling that commercial market space, how that all comes together with this experience, with this desire to understand and prod and go further.
So when you traveled there, do you feel more of a connection?
I think so. I think it's funny because I enjoy it because everybody there, Vietnamese nationals, they seem to recognize that I'm Vietnamese. So people try to speak to me, or they'll ask, you're mixed with something, like, what's going on? And so that's an interesting experience. It's being seen in a different way from a place of kind of inclusion and belonging that it doesn't happen here. And it's not, I don't feel, I haven't had any big instances of racial violence or anything like that, but it's just different in the US, But it's different when I'm traveling because there is this kind of curiosity, this understanding like, I see you're one of us with a little something else. What could that be? So it's a little bit different rather than being here where it's kind of like, you're an immigrant of some sort or from immigrant stock, I see. What is that? People always want to know, what are you? And it's like, okay, like I don't feel that is a super violent experience, but it is part of my experience, and I'm answer it all the time.
So literally people will ask you like, where are you from? Anticipating that you're from some other country. Is that the deal?
Well, people are always curious about the ethnic background of people that aren't white. What are you? Explain to me. What are you? And it's fine. Like I'm not, this isn't something that I feel injured by. I'm happy to answer it, but it is based on the understanding that this is a place of whiteness and that we need to know actually what you are. Like this is a topic for discussion. If you'd answer, then we can move on with our conversation and getting to know each other. And so it's just a reality, not mad at anybody, but that is how it goes. And so in this kind of prodding and experimentation and trying to harness some of these symbols and realities that I've experienced, it's all part of that conversation.
I find that interesting. I do genealogy, so I'm always interested about myself, but I'm always interested about where other people come from and maybe how they got here. Or sometimes you'll look at somebody and go, I wonder if they're Japanese or, and so you're just kind of, I'm famous for saying, so, what's your ancestry? And just because it's curiosity. So I thought what you said about when you go to Vietnam, they look at you, but it's with, some inclusion, like we know you're part of us, but what other part are you? And where I can see like the United States, it wouldn't feel that way. It would be like, oh, I want to know where you came from, especially in today's political environment. Obviously in the news, we're hearing a lot of violence against Asians, and which is total crap. And, but so I just thought that the term you used about the inclusion part was really interesting. So
yeah, I find it to be a pleasant and like tickling experience when it happens, when I'm able, to get abroad. But yeah, I think I'm also, because I'm mixed, I'm biracial, there's I'm kind of an indiscriminate race for a lot of people. So they're like, okay, are we dealing with a Hispanic person? I've gotten it all, Polynesian, Hawaiian, every kind of Asian person, perhaps not Italian, but there's always like an interest in what exactly is going on, like the need to kind of pinpoint that. Whereas in Vietnam, they're kind of like, Vietnamese and what else? And it's interesting.
Yeah,
it is interesting. And I'm glad you spoke to that, because I had this conversation. Do you know the artist Sammy Lee?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I had this kind of conversation with her earlier this week. I went and saw her show that she has currently going on. And she was talking, and she has a very different experience, right? And especially during the pandemic. But you used a term which I thought was interesting, and I'm almost sure that she used the same term, that it's a whiteness thing. That typically when people inquire, they're white people, right?
Not necessarily, which is not a nice, clean answer, unfortunately. And I think a lot of it is just a general curiosity. But I think it's from the point, if you're from here, you're coming from the standpoint of a patriarchal kind of Caucasian capitalist society. So that's all, I think that's built in. So that understanding that even if you're not like a white person, that like we're understanding our baseline as being white. So we do actually need to know what you are, since you're not actually our baseline normal citizen. So what are you? So I think it comes from that same kind of that same idea, but it's not like only white people ask me this. No, that's not true.
Okay. It's complex though. And I guess I'm always curious about how other people, how their experience is, right? And if it's something that is just, embedded in our DNA as, American culture. that we're
Mm-hmm.
proliferating this thing. And if people are being more conscious of it or they're not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's come to the forefront, and I don't have I don't have all the answers. I think that we're all just trying to get through this thing and make everyone's experience better and raise each other up and all of this. But is it okay to ask somebody what their ancestry is? I mean, I think so, but it also depends how you're asking, why you're asking. That all factors in, and yeah, that's never a simple answer, which would just be great. But
Yeah, the communication part plays into it and the thought behind it, right?
intention matters.
Intention,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. And, as we move along, interracial marriages happen or relationships happen more and more. And my daughter is half Native American and half white. And so and then my grandkids are a quarter Hispanic, a quarter Native American, and half white. So,
Yeah.
or I mean, so because my daughter married a gentleman who was Hispanic and white. His dad was white, his mom was Hispanic. So there's all this mixing together. But my daughter and my wife, when we were growing up, lived in an area that was very anti-Native American. So they felt alienated by the white population and by their own Native American population because they didn't grow up in that community. So there's been a lot of interracial, the racial edge from both directions, at least from my family's experience. Hopefully this will all, as generations go, it'll get a little bit, less of an issue.
Yeah, I think it will. I think it will. Hybrids are stronger. So there you go.
There you go.
I want to go back and talk with you about some of your previous exhibits and work. Since we're kind of on this topic, I want to talk about Miss Vietnam.
So that Miss Vietnam was a project that I did a few years back. And that was one that was first sort of coming into this cultural identity aspect and bringing that into the work. And so I was using a few different motifs, working with a few different ideas, but this was really where a lot of the imported Asian candies started coming in, which work their way in via imagery. Like I've done some flat work, some paintings, sewn in candy wrappers into vinyl so that they're kind of visible and displayed. I'm using traditional Vietnamese ao dresses that I've kind of displayed. I was thinking of them as these, much the way you would display a butterfly that you've collected. So these items that are not able to be worn at this point, but more preserved for curiosity's sake and for analysis and admiration. And then I have these elements of yellow wallpaper happening, going back to the short story, what is Charlotte Perkins, The Yellow Wallpaper. So that kind of conversation around femininity, being in the domestic space, the kind of pressures and confines of that, and then this idea, this mental illness playing into it. And as well as this is like my first kind of makeshift jungle idea. So I was bringing in some of these elements of that kind of imagery. So there is a waterfall, that piece in this that I'd ordered from the internet. That was the first time I'd done that I used here. And then I was just kind of buying house plants and things, adding them these fake bamboo garlands, putting them in the work. And so I was interested in this kind of desperate act of collection to kind of piece together an understanding, to try and get to this place of cultural belonging or understanding through these market sourced items. And so I like that conflict. I like that I critique that exact idea, and yet I'm trying to do it. And so I think there's this element of futility that makes the work pretty interesting for me.
At the end of that show or putting together this exhibit, what was your takeaway from it in exploring all this work?
Yeah, my takeaway was that I felt like I'd turned a stone over and found a lot underneath it, and that I'd known that there was going to be a lot more exploration coming. And, you learn, hopefully from every project, you learn something, something you don't want to do. But best case scenario, you have a few more things that you do want to do and things that could be better executed. Like I would hope that we're all moving forward and able to recognize where improvements can be made. A lot of that happened from this show. And so I've been, carrying some of those threads throughout works up until, last week when Exotic Sophisticated opened. And here again are the strawberry Pocky. And here are the references to the white rabbits. And here is that makeshift jungle. But now instead of just buying the one piece, trying to speak to that constructed identity, that much of it I've learned from media, so movies, TV, from the commercial space, from this image of itself, this copy of a copy. Now I'm actively aware of that and seeking it. So I find that waterfall that speaks to that paradise that was available for $49.99, that has the lotuses in it. And I'm going to buy it and I'm going to repeat it over and over and over and over. So I think that futility and that kind of, I think of it as like a kind of desperation or like an overcompensation, but I'm using those ideas as a tool to get there. So not that these are desperate works, but that I think that there is that built-in futility that adds a kind of nuance to it.
I'm looking at some of your other projects here. I want you to talk about the whole juice cleanse.
Oh my gosh, juice cleanse, love it. Yeah, so that was at Lane Meyer Projects, located inside Pon Pon Bar, and my good friend Brooke Tomiello curated this. So this show, what I'd done was I'd went on a juice cleanse, which was I'd found on the internet as being Kim Kardashian's favorite juice cleanse. And I'd kind of replicate the days and each drink. And then I'd done that as a type of performance that happened beforehand. So and I was thinking of it as an endurance performance. How ridiculous, unbelievable that so many people do this. I think is a kind of violence done unto oneself, often for the wrong reasons. But anyway, so I wanted to take that and play with it. I wanted to live through it. And so what I'd done was during this juice cleanse, I'd taken notes throughout the days and noted the times about what I was craving at that time, what I wanted to eat. And so I'd noticed over time that it was this really interesting, unintentional, undoctored split between really highly processed American food and then Vietnamese dishes, often that my mom would make. And so things like hot dogs with ketchup, corn dogs, chicken nuggets came up, bread with apricot jam. It was very distinct. I really wanted that. And then contrasted with things like beef. I wanted to eat bangkuan a lot of, fish sauce. I was like craving these two kind of separate palettes throughout that time, and cigarettes. I don't smoke anymore, but I really wanted some Camel Blues during that time.
Oh God, I love that.
And I love the representation of the Camel cigarettes with the juice straws coming out. I thought that's brilliant.
Yeah. I thought that was a fun contrast as well. Yeah, so I've done this all in this kind of spa aesthetic is what I was thinking of. That's something that I've talked about a lot with this work. In this industry, it's often of self-care. We're sold ideas that are often self-loathing under the idea of self-improvement and better mental health and better physical health. But I don't know that that's the case. And so once I I started thinking about that, and then I started realizing that there's a corresponding aesthetic to it that is very formulaic and very simple, then I knew I was on the trail of something. Because why is it that when we're talking self-care, we're going to see the black stones, the black polished garden stones, we're going to see the bamboo, we're going to see, like the bamboo fountain, there's going to be these rolled towels, there's going to be orchids, rippling water. I think having that image to brand and sell makes these ideas and these products viable on the commercial market, because we need to know what we're looking at, because it's easier for us to buy it and consume it if we have this baseline understanding of the imagery of it. And so I think underneath that, there is always this idea of kind of attaining happiness, of attaining a kind of purity, like cleansing oneself of toxins. Well, what toxins? Like I've never heard a toxin named. Perhaps they're there, perhaps they're not. Perhaps it's just you trying to be absolved of guilt or shame or who knows what. But I think that is the underlying subtext for a lot of this industry that punishes you for having a body, that punishes you for consuming items that are available to you and marketed to you day in and day out. And so I wanted to have some fun with that. I wanted to talk about these ideas. I wanted to use the active performance space in this, but I approached it, as an endurance performance that I did beforehand, which then informed and determined the imagery and form of the rest of the work. And then in this show, actually, I also had a whole row of like salt lamps and these humidifiers and oil diffusers. So this show really had a strong scent as well. So it had, different oil blends that were like Bamboo Forest and Breathe, Relax, marketed with those kinds of named fragrances. And so these things were just going constantly. And it was pretty fun.
That is fun. I love it. You were thinking through that very deeply and tracking everything. And I love how you've put this all together. At the end of your cleanse, did you feel better?
I felt better that it was over.
Which is what I think most people feel, right?
Yeah. I didn't have any discernible like boost in health or energy. I think that is just complete nonsense. And I think you can, So I don't really subscribe to any of that. I do believe in healthy eating and, a balanced diet and all of this, regular exercise, whatever it's going to take care of your mind, see a therapist, you need to do it, whatever. But I don't think that we're going to improve our lives and improve the relationships and stop self-loathing by depriving ourselves of food for a week. It's really just a easy grab at control by disciplining the body. And I believe what could be a harmful process. So that's all there. That's all there.
So you're still down for a good corn dog or a big plate of nachos?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. Yes, very much so. Everything
good.
In moderation, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Bagel, cream cheese. Yeah. Nachos. I eat nachos every week in real life. I love it.
I love nachos too.
I also run 30 miles a week. So, you got to hit that balance.
Right.
You run 30 miles a week?
I do. Yes. It's a pandemic thing, but I feel so much better. 32 this week.
Wow.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah. Just another week. I enjoy it.
Would you still smoke a Camel cigarette though?
No. I'm not so tempted. And thank goodness. Nothing that's going to mess up my running. But then also I just don't feel so tempted anymore. It just makes you feel terrible.
It does, but I quit smoking a long time ago. And I still, when I see somebody smoking, sometimes I go, God, I wish I'd like to have a cigarette right now.
I think about it.
Yeah. I miss the routine.
Yes.
That's what I miss. The whole process of everything that goes into it. It's almost, and if you're a smoker, you can relate, right? It's like almost like a religious thing in some ways.
Yes. Well, it's not tradition, but it's like action. What it was, ritual. It's ritualistic.
Yeah.
And so you can break up your day with your cigarettes. And I love lighting a cigarette. I love, it's all of that. Love putting it out. All of that. So it's all built in. It's all that kind of, that learned kind of programmed behavior. There's also, that chemical bond there that's happening as well. So, with Juice Cleanse, I like that you would be bringing that association then. So that piece was called Not a Smoker Anymore. I can't remember exactly. It's like day 2:45 p.m., Camel Blues, in parentheses, not a smoker anymore.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Let's talk about this one. Intrigues me because I didn't find much about it, but this whole new car, new you. Was that a performance piece? What What was
That
that all about?
was.
Okay.
Yes. So that piece was done with Black Cube Nomadic Museum, directed, curated by Courtney Lane Stell. And this work is part of an ongoing, I believe it might still be ongoing series where they're using artists and their cars as the site of the work. And so for this one, I took my 2014 magnetic gray Toyota Yaris and decided that I was going to try and sell it as my art piece. And so I have my car here. I went and purchased all of these red, white, and blue pennant flags. I blew up a balloon arch. I'd kind of dressed myself up as like a car sales associate, printed a little badge, had my clipboard, printed out the details for my car, and I had the title in hand. I'd had the car fully detailed. I would have sold it. I mean, I can redo this piece, still for sale. But yeah, the idea with this work was that this conversation I have with the formation of identity, which I believe is a type of pursuit of happiness that can be attained through the purchase of commercial products, I think is very much embodied in the automotive industry. They rely on that quite a bit. So a Ford truck man, for example, we all know who that is. If you want to be that, maybe you can go ahead and buy a Ford and it will come true. There you go. Bam, you've done it. Is it that easy? Who knows? Do you even want that? Who knows? But that's what they're selling and that's what people are buying. And so New Car, New You I was talking a little bit about I was thinking of it as, by buying this car, you would be able to remake yourself into Toyota's vision of the economical, compact, kind of sporty, but versatile, fuel efficient Toyota Yaris. And so as the performer in this piece, I was not breaking character, but really trying to, get to know people, like have those kind of quick, easy interactions, let them sit in the car, give it a test drive. Let's see, we're all going to fit. Like, tell me the last time you couldn't fit in a parking space, this kind of conversation, and really trying to sell this thing for the one-time price of $9,999.99, a steal on today's marketplace. So,
yeah, especially now.
Yeah. And so it didn't sell, but I had a great time. And so that was the basis of this work, is that the kind of recognition that we form our identity so effectively and so often and at such high cost through the automotive industry, who have changed the landscape of our society. And I didn't talk about that too much, but I think that conversation is there, how integral driving a car and that level of independence is to being an American, where a lot of other nations don't have that access. And the car is not such a big thing. That level of being able to get up and go, and you don't need anybody else. You don't need public transit. You don't need your family to give you a ride. You can do this because you're a self-cultivated person, because, you're able to afford this, and because you deserve it. I think that's a lot of the cultural learning and the ethos of being an American in a capitalist society, late capitalist society. And so I wanted to bring those elements in, to have those on the table, though during the actual performance and execution of the work, that wouldn't be something that I talk about, but that's something that later I will write about and discuss in opportunities like this. I think it's there.
I love that. So did you guys film this at all, or was it just you interacting and doing the performance?
It was the second one. We did not film it, but we had a photographer come out and document the show. I've had video documentation of other works, but this one I did not.
And then what was the deal with the limo? The idea behind that?
Oh, that was part of the show. So for this, that was how you kind of entered. It was all set up in this parking garage. So Black Cube, they do have a headquarters now, but they operate on a nomadic basis. So they're kind of finding different sites and setting up exhibitions in these different sites. And so this one, the site was a parking garage, and to enter it, they thought it'd be fun if you had to pass through the limo, like kind of scoot through on your butt through the back of the limousine to then enter the exhibition space, which was just a parking lot, a 2-story parking lot.
That's brilliant.
I thought so too. Great job, guys.
Uh, I wish I could have participated in that. That would have been fun as all get
It
out.
was so fun. Yeah. They do a great job over there.
You've had a fairly lengthy relationship with them.
Yes. I mean, I'd been a fan since I moved here and then had worked with them on that piece. And I've been involved in Black Cube's orbit for different kind of, some volunteers, some kind of more or less kind of on the administrative side, but then also I was the featured artist for a conversational kind of community-based platform that they do called Talk with Your Mouth Full. So, I've been involved with them in and out over the years.
This is a pretty recent exhibit that you did, the animal, vegetable, mineral. That happened last year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that opened last late summer. And that was a 2-person show with my good friend, Lindsay Smith-Gustav. And she and I we'd been talking about this show for years. And working on it a little bit here and there kind of for years as a more or less call and response basis. And that's to say that it started with kind of one piece, and then I responded to her. She then responded to what I made. I then responded to that. And so that kind of developed in tandem in a linear timeline. And it started with her drawings that she does, where she would go on these kind of nature walks and things, and she'd be in the physical space where she, found herself, and would find these elements of life to describe that unique place, being an animal, a vegetable, and a mineral. So depending on if you're in Columbus, Ohio, or if you're in the middle of the desert, you're going to have different physical evidence of this that speaks to that location. And so I thought the work was so beautiful, and she's so methodical in drawings and just doing really detail-oriented work and very patient work. And so in response to that, I'd started this own kind of conversation with my interest in the commercial landscape, in kind of homogenized, mass-produced culture. Like, do we have these kinds of unique characteristics? And my kind of assertion, my kind of muse for this was that no, we don't. So that you can go into any city in any state in the US, and the animals that you'll find will be domesticated pets. The minerals that you'll find will be gemstones and gold. Humans seem to covet the same ones over and over again. And the vegetables that you can find, which is to be, to say plant life. I was thinking of flowers in grocery stores, which you can get year round, the same, 20 varietals, rain, shine, whatever it is. And so for me, focusing on that homogenization of that landscape was interesting to me, where I think she had started with that kind of specificity, and then I'd kind of blown it up to kind of be, how I see human interaction on the environment, then changing that environment.
So the concept for the show, did this start pre-pandemic?
Oh, yes. It was, I believe, 2 years in the making. So almost immediately after we'd met, which would have been 2016, 17, we'd started talking about it, like that we want to do a show and like talking about these works. And then over time, at one point we finally did decide that we're going to do it. Let's start doing it. And so that's when the call and response began, and it developed over time. But yeah, it didn't, it had mounted to something else. It ended in quite a different place than where it started, which was exciting and expected. But yeah, we were both really happy with the end product.
I love the exploration. That must have been incredibly exciting and fun.
It is, and it's hard. I don't do a great deal of collaboration because it's tough. You're really trusting somebody else to change the course of your work. And, I care very deeply for my output. And so it's important that if everything feels authentic and that it checks out and that it's to a standard that I can put my name on. And so with Lindsay, it was just a match made in heaven. She's amazing. I totally so grateful for her and just really enjoyed this show. And Leon Gallery as well, who hosted it. Eric and Eric, who run the space, are gems.
How was it this past year in 2020 as far as your artistic output in the pandemic? Did it affect you very much?
It did. And so in the beginning, I think like so many of us, I just completely shut down for like a month. And I didn't even feel bad about it because it's like, it's funny to think about because now it almost feels over. I know it's not, but we did not know what was going on. And so I know some people immediately were like exploding with creative energy and like in the home and like creating so much work. And I was just like, all right, yeah, good for you. Like that's not my experience and whatever, good for you. But pretty shortly after that, so I'd started running and that kind of really helped clear my mind. Turns out it does calm you down. You could not have convinced me before, but now I'm a believer. and then not too long after, I'd started really reinvesting my time in the ceramic studio. So I'm always working. I've been teaching consistently, but I hadn't had the same level of investment and kind of renewed interest in this material that I know so well and love so much. So that kind of space of having everything else shut down and kind of refinding, really needing to sense what, the little flickering hand on the compass, like where was it going? It just starts very small in the beginning. And it was back into the studio. I really wanted to, or the ceramic studio. It's a mixed media studio as well. But into that tactility, into this familiar place. I don't have to think, like I'm just automatically have projects going. I'm recycling clay over here. I'm mixing glaze over there. Like this is drying over here. And this is, I'm going to need to do this, and this. Like it's really like clockwork and it's really my happy place. It's really where I feel very much myself. And I can see the evidence of, the training that I think is important and for the skills that I value, but also like really working to challenge that at the same time is something that happened during pandemic that I'm very pleased with.
So that energy is just kind of proliferated and continued on.
Yes, definitely. Yes. I mean, I've been working pretty like feverishly just throughout 2021. I found a new studio that I'd been teaching at, Washington Heights Art Center in Lakewood. They are great. Check them out. But I loved that studio. Still love it. I'll be teaching there up until the bitter end, up until 2 days before I drive away, because I really find joy in that place, in that building. And I think they're, it's just been great. But yeah, especially as availability to other resources was kind of closing down for a while. And then availability to these access to these studios were opening up. So then I had 2 ceramic studios I was working out of. It happened kind of naturally. And I just leaned right into it.
You're a former Red Line resident?
Yes. They are so great. So that was a 2-year residency. It ended up being a little bit extended from the pandemic closures and things. But they're, my favorite arts nonprofit in Denver. I think they do so much good work for the communities that have been gentrified, partially from their existence, which they address up front and then make moves to make the places better, to help people out. But they also help artists so much. What a glorious gift to have a studio space for 2 years rent-free. And then it's not just the physical space, like they have all kinds of other resources that they bring in, from studio visits to, all kinds of consulting, museums, curators, just professionals in the field. Like they actively work very, very hard to get their artists opportunities and tools to then find opportunities. And so I can't say enough good stuff about them. They are great. Support.
Sounds like it was a wonderful experience. And that's not
they're just it's such a positive force. They're really wonderful. At first I came in and everyone was so nice and so happy. And I was like, what, I kind of wondered, like what's going on here? Like what's really going on here? But then I learned pretty quickly that, oh my God, that is just what is going on here. Like this is a glowing ember of positive force that can grow with your generous support.
There you go.
And you've had, looking at your CV, you've done like 8 different residencies all over the place.
Oh yeah. I like to. Anytime I can have an excuse to travel somewhere, or, I think a lot of these places are, like I'm interested in what they're offering and what they're doing. And in seeking these new opportunities, I think you can find things along the way. You can meet people that are really great. And I think your practice grows the more that you expose yourself to other ideas and people and challenge yourself to make work in different spaces. I think as you move around and as you travel from studio to studio or different locations in the country, nation, whatever, the only consistent thing is yourself. And so I think that through that kind of repeated stripping of the familiar, you find what is at the core. And so it's been important and exciting and just such a fun opportunity to be able to do these residencies.
Outside of Redline, what have been some of your favorite residencies that you've done?
One that I really enjoyed was in North Adams at Mass MoCA, which is one of my favorite museums in the country. And they have, it's called the Studios at Mass MoCA. And they give you a great apartment to live in. It's in this post-industrial town. Yeah, like the museum itself was the mill, like the primary fabric mill for Union soldiers. And so it's huge, it's expansive, and it has these amazing infrastructure in it, like just where they were steaming and dyeing fabric. I've never seen anything like it. And it's, decrepit and repurposed. And then the city of North Adams is a little bit the same. So once great, but now kind of fallen, and people are piecing it back together. But there's, problems with different substances out there. There's a problem with cash flow and all of that. I think some of these things are changing, but that's, the story across a lot of the US. But just you get a wonderful studio space there. And I think the level of artists that were involved were really great. And I had a great group that I got to meet and hang out with. And then just interacting with the museum itself and seeing those shows and kind of talking to folks there was all just a really great experience. I had a great time there.
And it's interesting, you talked about, creating in different spaces and that you're stripped down to just yourself. And I never thought about it that way. But that's really interesting to think about, like being in a completely foreign space and yet bringing what you bring to the table and creating from there, solely from yourself.
Definitely.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just, just going back to some of these previous conversations about the things that you collect to kind of build yourself up and to remind you who you are. You remind yourself of your accomplishment by the expensive speakers that you have in your home. You're reminded that you are this person because your hand-stitched, hand-dyed indigo jeans, are worn by this person and this person. And so, whatever those facets may be, once they are removed, what is left? So it's all part of it. I'm thinking about these things all the time. I have these frameworks for seeing the world, and I see them in other places. And I try to address that with my work when it's worth it. It's not always there, but through that kind of material and conceptual pursuit, I think sometimes you do get some good stuff.
You talked about believing that you just need to go in and just do the work. But what do you do on those days where you're not feeling it? You're not feeling ultra inspired or into it for whatever reason.
So these days, of course, they happen to everybody. On those days, I see a connection to my kind of newfound running practice, which is like a kind of stamina that you've just got to get through it, sit through it, make it happen. And so deadlines help. But if not, then I can break it up with little less consequential projects. So if I'm not ready to kind of delve into this larger sculpture, I might then, in the ceramic studio, I might then start rolling out some little Pocky sticks to be used later, or find these smaller pieces, have some playtime, some less important kind of unfocused time. And oftentimes these elements will involve themselves later, because I do believe that to be part of the process. But for me, it's very much about not walking away, which I feel like, of course, we all do it sometimes. Sometimes you have to. But on those days where you do break through that wall, that's almost always what it looks like for me, is having a little bit of playtime. So maybe I'm going to make a few mugs, like I make and sell utilitarian ceramic work as kind of a side thing. Like I love it. I think it's important, but it's not really my fine art practice, but it can offer that place that is free from pressure, just as much as, okay, well, I guess I'll pinch out a few frogs. Who knows why? Because I can't work on this other thing right now. But so finding those, just trying to keep hands in clay, but less pressure. Like with writing, like I like doing a lot of writing as well. If you think of the finished piece and how far away it is and how much work you need to do and the kind of research that will inevitably come up and the kind of actions that are going to happen, and then the problems that are going to be there that you won't see until a week later. Like if you think about all of that at once, it's not going to happen. But what you have to do is just get the stream of consciousness going. Just write something horrible that will change. But you have to have that starting point, and you have to sit down and do it. The writing doesn't write itself. The work doesn't make itself. The ideas don't form themselves. You have to work.
I love that. I love that analogy too with writing, because it's so true. It's like, you got to start somewhere, and it doesn't matter if it sucks, right? You just got to start it and roll with it. And then you can go back and, I tell my kids this all the time because my son hates writing, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm like, don't get hung up in the big picture. You just got to start getting something down on the paper, right?
Get something down, and then they turn into other things. And then you come back later and you see you had this sentence. It wasn't working, but now that makes me realize what is working. And so, yeah, it's all part of it. Everybody hates writing. I do a lot of writing. I hate it, but but I like getting it done, and I have that satisfaction. And but it's the hardest thing. I mean,
well, and writing well, because in this day and age with social media and everybody using abbreviations and texting and stuff, it really is a lost art,
Yes, it's tough.
It is. I'm with you. I hate it, but I love it. I love it when I can focus and distill it down to what I'm trying to say. And I've been able to convey it in an intelligent way, which doesn't always come out of my mouth that way. But at least when I'm putting on paper, I can make it sound intelligent, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I love words, and I love vocabulary. So I love dictionaries. I love the thesaurus. Those are all my friends. And there's some satisfaction in there,
Yes, high satisfaction when you can get it done. That's for sure.
And I think the one thing that you mentioned that is the key for people just driving through is it's a practice. In order to be a practice, it's repetitive. It's something that you commit to every day, and that you maybe have a routine that it's easy. You get up, you do the same thing, and then you start. And, like you said, you run, and that helps you get into the practice of creating art. So
definitely. Yeah. I mean, running is much the same way too. Like it started with one heaving, panting, horrible run around the block. And then it builds and builds and builds until I'm, just easily, happily running more than I ever thought I would in my entire life. But it's the exact same thing. It's with writing. It's with the artistic practice. It's with everything. I'm thinking this could just be how life is.
You seem very disciplined. Are you always disciplined?
No.
No.
I don't know. I mean, I do like to have fun. I like to let loose, guys. I like to go eat what I'm going to eat. I like to explore. I like to play. I like to do silly things. I like to go swimming. I like dogs and cats, and I like all kinds of stuff. But when it comes to things I care about them a lot. And I think personally that if you love something, it means that you can't love everything, and it means that you build a kind of a hierarchy of importance, but then also like terms to which you hold them to. So I think because I love art, some art that is working and doing and making the changes that I want to see, it means that I can't love it all. Like you become discerning. To love something means that you understand that there is going to be a system that that you're identifying and working within and against and, investigating. And so I see all of that as part of this nebulous experience.
Deadlines. Let me ask you about that.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a good deadline person?
I am. Yes, because I'm not going to miss it. Like what? If the show must go on, if we've got a date and we're opening at this time, it is going to happen. It's what I do. What else would I be doing? I'm going to sit home and like not get the thing done that I care about, the thing that I've altered the trajectory of my entire life to do must be done, so I very much get to the grind when I need to.
No procrastination.
No, I do procrastinate a little bit here and there. It's tough. It can be tough, but I never miss a deadline. But, why is it that these most active hours thinking, writing, working in the studio come, weighted towards the end? That is a reality. But I do keep the flame going all the time. That's for sure.
Let me ask you a business question. How do you go about pricing these pieces that you like in your current show? Do you have a formula that you work off of?
So I have, so I've been making and exhibiting work for many years. And so I have a kind of track record of that I try to stick to. I try to not inflate prices based on favorite works. I think that is always the wrong thing to do. For example, if you have 5 works of the same size and materials and such, if you like one better, it should not cost more than the other. With your prices, you're sending out a message about the value of your work and time, but also how much you understand the commercial market. So I just love it when there's like a new artist and they're like, this drawing costs $25,000. And it's like, that is beautiful. Like, I am so glad you value what you're doing, but turns out there's not really a connection with reality and like the larger art market and history. So what you need to do, maybe go to a few shows, get an idea of that landscape, build your artist community, see what is actually happening here on the ground, put in that research, put in that time, keep making stuff, keep believing, but to recognize that it is an ecosystem and it is a balance, and that you don't just shoot out the gate saying everything's 10 grand because I work so hard, but that it is an ongoing conversation that you're having with other people, with collectors, but also, like, do you want to make your work accessible to the everyday person, to the layman, like to the person walking by that loves it? Like, is that something that you value? Or, like, knowing your audience and your goals connects so much with who you are and your ideas. And I think often these things, when they're working, they all come up together in tandem.
What other advice would you give artists from a successful artist's point of view and from being part of a gallery and working in a gallery? Yeah,
I would suggest that people follow lines of inquiry. So if there's something that you're interested in, to just keep digging, keep going. I think people developing skills and being just putting in the time. And that's not to say that, like, if you can't like perfectly dovetail a wooden joint, that like nobody's going to pay attention to you, but it's to say that, like, make your investments with your time and with your energy where they are needed, and to not shy away or hope that someone else is going to do it for you, but to really, make it your job, because it is your job.
Where do you see that the artists really stumble?
I feel like I see people trying to, especially these days, like with a lot of social media and such, like trying to like brand themselves in a way so that I am the person that does this and this and this. And so kind of limiting themselves, and then trying to stick with that and own this and really put that imagery forward. And so to me, that might seem like a good idea at the time, but like, if you don't have a connection to the thing that's keeping you going, you'll dry up pretty quick. Are you going to paint cactuses for the rest of your life? Like, what? And some people do. And I bless them. That's not what I do. I could not do such a thing. But like, if you don't keep in contact, in direct conversation with the thing that is keeping you going, with the interests that you have that propel you forward, I think that you might get bored, but even worse, you might get lost and you might lose that connection to that thing that kept you grounded. And then all of a sudden I painted cactuses for so long. Maybe I'll paint dogs. Maybe I'll paint, thimbles. It's like you need to keep that tether to what is important in your practice and in your life, and following the lures of that kind of easy branding, of that kind of just flash, of just recognizability, of just a few easy sales now or next year or in 3 years. Well, then in 5 years, you might be one of the many, many, many artists that, maybe we don't talk about so much anymore.
Well, and I think artists should always be evolving. And I've seen a number of artists that they're kind of like for lack of, this is a bad way to put it, but a one-trick pony. This is what I do, and this is all I do. And there's very little variation, and I don't see any growth. So as a collector, I would think that would be a little bit limiting. I'd buy some of your pieces, and I probably would quit buying if there was no growth. I would think. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People like things within these same kind of terms, but to see like small developments. And, I think on the flip side of that, a lot of artists these days are finding different materials and ways to kind of talk about their different ideas. So rather than just, rendering a piece in 2-dimensional space, like on a canvas, they might start then like making these other little pieces and involving that, or like involving community in some way, trying to, work across media and disciplines. And so, like from the gallery side, I do see this happening. And I think that that's exciting, but everything in moderation, right? So like if you are a tried and true painter, and this is actually your passion in your life, well, I'm not saying that you need to go, learn how to pour iron now to like keep it interesting. Like you're still a painter and that's okay. But to keep it vital, keep that connection. Like this year, all of the paintings of yellow cups sold, but know in your heart that you are not the yellow cup painter, So that's, I think, having that kind of mentality of investigating, taking something as far as it can go, but having the flexibility and the grounding to be able to move on to whatever's next is crucial.
Do you think a lot of artists fall into the trap of trying to compare themselves to their peers or to other artists?
Definitely. And it's hard not to, especially in, I think, like a small community like Denver, but also in larger circles as well. And I think there's always going to be a little bit of cross-pollination, and that's fine. I know some people can get really up in arms about that, but it's, this idea of original art perhaps not existing in the way that we think it might. I do prescribe to that. So I think that there can be elements where you might see somebody's work and internalize it and then not even know you're producing it, rather than saying, oh my gosh, that really worked, I'm going to go ahead and knock that off. Like, I think that happens less, but I think people more grow from the ideas of others quite often. And it can be upsetting, but what you have to do is then look through the artist's portfolio and see, oh my gosh, did they just all of the sudden start doing this kind of, presenting works hanging off an old iron chain after they saw this other thing? Or has there always been a kind of interest in this kind of suspension and these kind of found materials? And was that with the imagery? Like, was this a natural progression, or did they just kind of pluck this from somewhere else? And I think quite often with a trained eye and with a little time, you can determine that. And so I think it's okay to see things, internalize them, and grow, because as artists, we're reflecting culture and experience all of the time. So it's impossible not to. We don't exist separate from these things. And I think it's strange to ask an artist not to, like, come from somewhere that is not now. That doesn't happen. But also to come with like an organic process, that I think is essential. And I think that is important to ask.
What do you think it means to be bold for an artist?
I think, to be bold as an artist, I've been thinking about this a little bit lately. And who knows, could be coming up in future projects. But I think depending on what your work is, but just not shying away from ideas. So taking things as far as they can go. So that, depending on what it is. So I'm thinking a little bit more about different kinds of performance and material kind of aspects, particularly with kind of found materials, which I use a lot, that I'm sourcing on the internet. But what is the furthest progression that this can go? So not just getting the one waterfall backdrop, but getting the whole room. Like, does it need to be the whole room? I think it does. If you've thought of it, to not shy away from it, not to be scared by cost or investment of time, because that is a big factor. Artists are not known for being rich, lucrative business people. But for me, it's where you're going to put that investment, and to make sure that you're always honoring the art and the work as the first thing. And that means making sacrifices. But I think to be bold is not to shy away from that pressure and that imperative, but to go all the way, to put yourself out, to inconvenience yourself if you have to, because it's just this whole, if it's important to you, you've got to do it. Nobody else is going to do it. And if it's not important to you, then go ahead and do what is.
That's awesome. I love that. That was a great explanation.
Thanks.
You've been doing this for a while. How do you deal with those times where things just don't go your way and rejection? How do you deal with that?
With rejection, I have my moments where I'm just gonna, maybe I need to consult my journal entries about this. Who knows? But I really try to hear critique and figure it out. And almost always, something you didn't want to hear in a couple of years, you're like, oh, okay, I kind of see it now. But to have that ability to adapt and to change and to learn from mistakes is something that I'm always trying to be aware of. It's tough, though, because, the mind must be a sieve. So if you let everything in, it will destroy you. You need to believe in yourself as well. And that can be hard when bad reviews come in, when people aren't getting it, when, you're being overlooked. But to just to recognize that you're going to keep moving forward and not to throw the towel in, but to just try and take it in stride, try and learn from things, try to let that be the thing that pushes you to take those bold steps. Like, maybe this didn't work because I wasn't doing the work. Maybe I held something back. Maybe I was being safe about it. I think for me, that is almost always part of it. So trying to reconnect with, your foundational kind of tenets of your practice, what you're interested in, what you do and why you do it. Those should be your touchstones. That's your safe place that you can always return to. And when it's working, you don't really need other people for that. And so I try to guard that fortress very closely.
Fantastic. You have this phenomenal show at Alto. You have this move coming to Ohio, the great state of Ohio. Yeah. Ohioans, get ready. They're coming.
Yeah.
She's on loan for just a few years, though. So she's coming back to Denver.
I hope so.
No, I think it's going to be a phenomenal experience. So what does the future hold? Do you have anything else in the works for later on this year, as far as any kind of shows or anything that you'd like to share or promote?
Yeah, well, let's see. So the next thing in just a couple weeks on June 26, 2021, we have the closing of Exotic Sophisticated at Alto. That'll be in the evening. Probably about 6 to 10 p.m. So I'm excited for that. That's also going to be something of a final hurrah in Denver before we drive away on the 30th. And then later, coming up, likely in August, we're setting an exact date, but for Night Lights Denver, I'm working with David Moak, who amazing guy, runs the program. It's a video piece that is projected on the Clock Tower building down in the 16th Street Mall. And so that will be, I'm really excited about that piece coming up. That piece is going to be called, let's see, I have it not created the work yet, but it's Miss Vietnam Grand Prize. And so it's going to be, well, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I am going to be collecting the grand prize in a beauty contest, and it will, we're going to have some princess waves, some confetti. It's going to be, projected up on this clock tower. I'm very excited for that coming up. And then in November, I will be for sure coming back to Denver for the Red Line annual resident exhibition, where I will have a piece in that group show. Those are my next couple of things. I also have like a collaborative interview project with Joey Conniff, who runs the program. That's a digital interview and platform. So we're working on that. So just little things coming up.
Well, keep us in the loop, and we'd love to know what's going on, and we're happy to promote anything that you have coming up. So let us know what's going on.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening, and especially on such short notice. I'm so glad that everything kind of came together, that you found my email and you pulled it out of the junk folder and found it and reached out. I really appreciate you doing that.
And thank you both. This has been such a great conversation. I really appreciate what you're doing. Yeah, I also just couldn't believe it when I saw like 6 days later this email from you. So thank you so much for reaching out and for your support, and just, great questions. I feel like I can't wait to get back in the studio after this. So I appreciate you both.
Well, we wish you all the luck on your move to Ohio and your eventual return. So, but good luck.
Thank you.
And we will be watching. We'll be following you. So we're excited.
Woo-hoo. Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah.
You too. And so for the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.